Hey everyone, welcome back to Reality 2.0. I am Catherine Druckman. Joining me is Doc Searles, and also joining us is Petros Katoupis, who you know from many, many previous episodes. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that we started a newsletter. If you got the first issue, awesome. We'd love to hear your feedback. And if you haven't, sign up at reality2cast.com on the newsletter sign up link, and you'll start getting them. And we look forward to putting them out. So today we're kind of going over our weekly reading list, for lack of a better explanation. And there are a few things that are on our mind and have sort of piqued our interest. One of them is the recent executive order geared toward regulating social media. And the most recent news that Ajit Pai of the FCC has indicated that he has the green light from the FCC's General Counsel to clarify Section 230 of the Communications Act, which is, has a lot of the tech community rightly concerned, and a somewhat related, intertwined issue is the relationship between journalism and social media. So, if the goal by the current FCC, for example, is to regulate social media as if they are a media outlet, what we'd like to do is unpack whether or not they are, because, I personally don't think they are. And I think the three of us have a few strong opinions about that, and we'll get into that. So let's figure this out. Let's figure out the relationship between the tech giants like Google and Facebook and traditional media. For example, the New York Times. I think they're certainly not the same, and I think there's a danger in assuming that they are similar. So, what do you think about that?
Well, I guess I could jump in because I've probably yelled more about this than either of the other two have. The executive order, as I understand it, and I risk being wrong about this because I think it came out in May? Something like that. Is that the one we're talking about? Trump's one of his too many executive orders that went out earlier this year, and he's just trying to clear the space to saying whatever the hell he pleases on Twitter and Facebook, mostly on Twitter.
That was in May. Yeah.
Yeah. Quite aside from the fact that Trump is being Trump here, and we all know what that's about. Whether we like him or not, we know what that's about. There's no mystery there as to what he's trying to do. But as a journalist, I have to tell you, it isn't just Facebook and Google. Facebook and Google actually play two roles here. One is they are places on the web and in our lives through other products that occupy a significant part of our lives, or many people's lives, but they're not the whole damn thing. We don't spend all of our time searching on Google and being on Google Maps and being on Facebook. We're in a lot of other places, and that's where the other role that Google and Facebook play, Google especially, which is that it's the back end for the way an awful lot of advertising gets routed. And the way an advertising is largely routed, as we've learned on earlier Reality 2.0s and from following Augustine Fu and me and other people who write about this and talk about this, we're tracked everywhere, and there's a really inefficient but highly complex system that Google is in the middle of at the back end of this, that's busy guessing at what we might want to see, or not what we want to see, but what ads could be aimed at our eyeballs. Aside from the fact this is an awful system, most of that actually doesn't go out through Google. It actually goes out to the rest of the web. It goes to the New York Times. It goes to the Wall Street Journal. It goes to Breitbart. It goes to Business Insider. It goes to a zillion publications and all the world's blogs that are supported by advertising. And those aren't the only companies in it. Adobe is in there in a huge way. So is Amazon. And Amazon can brag better on how effective they are because they know how you shop. And they can aim some ads based on that. And they make big profit on that, and they make small profit, as I understand it, in their ordinary retail and even in AWS. And some people, I hope, will dispute me on that, but the fact remains that they're in the ad business too. And they can claim to be better at aiming this stuff than others are. What does this do to journalism? Well, the main thing that happened to journalism, and happened to us at Linux Journal, is that, as I put it in Advertising's Wheat and Chaff, or Separating Advertising's Wheat and Chaff, and an essay I put up several years ago, Madison Avenue fell asleep, direct marketing ate its brain, and it woke up as an alien replica of itself. What happened is that most of the advertising we see online is actually direct marketing. It is not advertising. Advertising is what taught me that 15 minutes will save me 15% with Geico, and there's such a thing called Ford Tough, and that I'm in good hands with Allstate, and a lot of other things like that, that's real branding. That has made almost all the brands known to the world, and that is not tracking-based advertising, which has not made a single brand known to the world. They are very, very different. It's just that they look the same. And what happened with journalism is that the sponsorship that supported journalism went away, because you could track the Wall Street Journal's reader and then hit them at Breitbart, because they're just aiming at eyeballs, right? That's the main thing. That's what Don Marty said. He's one of our one of our best prior editors in chief, and he's been all over this case, and is working with Consumer Reports now, and was at Mozilla for a long time. He knows his stuff around this. It's a really complicated story, but the main thing is the sponsorship went away, and that, in a real sense, is what killed Linux Journal, is what kills a lot of other publications, and because we didn't want to take tracking-based advertising. So if you're going to take tracking-based advertising, you stay in business. Tim Huang just came out with a book, or is coming out with a book maybe today. He's another colleague of mine, called Subprime Attention Crisis, where he says the whole thing is a bubble, it's about to burst. Anyway, my point, and this is kind of like my main point, I don't mean to filibuster here, my main point is that it isn't any of this stuff that's killing journalism. It's the freaking internet and digital technology itself, because the internet supports everything, absolutely everything. It's like gravity. It's like blaming gravity for running or something. And everybody can be a journalist now. That is what social media has enabled at an early state. Anybody can be a journalist. Anybody can take their phone and they can shoot pictures of bad things being done. George Floyd, for example, was made possible not so much by social media, but by the fact that smartphones have journalistic equipment on them. All of us can be journalists. And that means all of the publications of the world were no longer in charge of things. And there's another thing, I don't know if we're talking about Matt Stoller's piece or not, but anyway, that's another piece we'll talk about. But
we'll get there.
Everybody wants policy to solve this. It won't. So that's my thing. It's the internet, folks. It's not social media.
So you bring up Matt Stoller's article, and I'll link to it in our description. In an editorial in the New York Times, he wrote that tech companies are destroying democracy and the free press. And it's a bold statement. It's not altogether untrue, I guess. But it might be problematic as well. I mean, I think so one of the things, one of the sort of core ideas, I think, in his editorial is that he treats tech companies like utilities, or social media platforms like utilities. And I think there's a danger in that. And we've talked about that a little bit offline. My personal feeling is that it's not so much that, going back to the executive order, and, there was a quote from the head of the FCC saying, let me read it. Social media companies have a First Amendment right to free speech, but they do not have a First Amendment right to a special immunity denied to other media outlets such as newspapers and broadcasters. Well, to me, that's a comparison that just doesn't make any sense. Holds zero water. Comparing a social media platform to a media outlet completely confuses the idea of a content creator versus just a communication platform. I mean, to me, that would be like going after the printing press manufacturer for the content of the newspaper. So to me, that's a better analogy. I don't know. I don't like the idea of talking about it as a utility, frankly, because utilities are regulated.
Yeah, I see it more as a vehicle. I mean, it helps the person get their voice out, right? But they shouldn't be held responsible for that voice.
How could they be? So part of this executive orders going after, Section 230. Well, Section 230, they seem to focus primarily on this Good Samaritan thing, that basically they're saying platforms like Twitter and Facebook are taking advantage of the Good Samaritan reporting part of Section 230, but they seem to kind of ignore the fundamental, like the previous and more significant, I would say, part. A lawyer once told me that word order matters. Whatever is mentioned first, is the most important thing in a legal document. So the beginning of Section 230 is about liability. So if you go after Section 230, you're trying to make platforms liable for other people's content, which goes back to my analogy about the printing press. If you make Twitter liable for what I post or what you post or what any politician posts or what any, conspiracy theorist posts, they just would have to cease to exist. They can't possibly be held liable for that. I mean, I understand that they seem to be going after this from a free speech perspective, but on the other hand, that makes zero sense to me, because if you want to hold a platform liable, then you're shutting down speech completely. It's not, that doesn't suddenly allow everybody to, freedom from any perceived censorship on the part of Twitter. That actually means that Twitter has to just shut down, because they're going to get sued because, somebody posted, well, I cured myself of COVID by drinking a gallon of bleach. And so I go, well, hey, Twitter, I read it on Twitter. So you're therefore responsible for that content. So anyway, I wondered what y'all thought about all of that.
I'll try to be quick this time. That's a good analogy. I mean, it's like, trying to stop the inventors of the printing press to, movable type, holding movable type liable for everything else. I mean, I forget who said it, but, free speech belongs to anybody who can buy their ink by the barrel. I think it was Mark Twain, maybe it was. But anyway, but what happens now is that free speech belongs to anybody who can get their pixels, and their bits for free. And by the way, that's anybody. And whether they get those bits from Facebook or Twitter or from their own server, it makes no difference. It's the fact that bits are abundant and the ability to arrange them into voice and text is more or less infinite, and anybody can do it anywhere. And that's really where we're at. And blaming the big technology companies for ruining democracy and ruining journalism, or in the case of Trump with this executive order saying that, we need to, change the regulatory apparatus for these big companies so that I can tweet without, fear of censorship is ludicrous. Find another place. I mean, an interesting thing is, if Trump had set up his own non-Twitter thing in the White House and said, here's White House, I'm going to take whitehouse.gov and it's going to be nothing but me saying shit for the next 4 years. If he'd done that in the beginning, he'd still have millions of people following that. He could have used RSS and have it syndicated into everybody's inbox. I mean, there's nothing to have stopped that. And, he chose to use Twitter, fine, but regulating them is a mistake, in my opinion.
I agree. Well, he chose Twitter for the same reason that a lot of people choose Twitter. It's where the people are. You go to the people that you want to reach. So.
And it's easy,
it's easy.
It's easy. You want to set something up on Facebook, it's really easy to do.
Well, I might argue that actually, but
depends on what you want to set up.
Yeah, it's even much easier on Twitter, right? You have limited characters that you can type, and you can get away with misspelling things.
Yeah, but you can't edit it. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem.
You get yourself in real hot water.
You can delete them, but then it's remembered somewhere. I
exactly.
think, yeah,
exactly.
It's not like it's gone.
I mean, they can still dig up tweets from so-and-so, right? That was probably deleted years ago. I mean, we read these scandals with a lot of these like Hollywood celebrities or any other celebrity where all of a sudden, we've discovered that 6 years ago they said something about, whatever. It can, the internet preserves everything.
Well, it's also a whiteboard. There's some things that have been written and they've utterly disappeared. I mean, a lot of it has utterly disappeared. The Internet Archive is trying to do a good job, and I think they do to some degree, but an awful lot of it is live. I mean, look at Vine or, Snapchat. I mean, that's all whiteboard. I mean, what's left of Vine at this point,
Well, I suppose the reality is that the content that we want to never disappear does, or frequently does.
Often
and then
it does. Yeah.
And then the stuff we don't ever want seen again is indelible.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
My wife is also involved in Linux Journal, but is not very public, so name her. Thinks that this period in history is going to disappear. I mean, because it's all digital, it's all volatile. It's there as long as somebody, if the Internet Archive doesn't rescue it, it's gone. But even that is not permanent. It's a bunch of drives, right? So somebody wipes out all those drives and all the backup drives, it's gone too. That 1,000 years from now, we'll look back and say, what happened in the early 2000s? Well, it's all gone. We don't know. We stored it in digital form, and nobody can read that now. What was that?
Well, same as how many people, early on, switching over from film to digital cameras have lost all of their photos because we had no concept of backing it up. Or
I was just going to mention that. Yeah, it's like taking your old vinyls and then converting them to,
Yeah, just melting them down. It's like I needed the vinyl for something else, and
it's like when I converted my parents' home movies from VHS to.
Oh, I got that top. I converted my parents had home movies on 16 millimeter and then 8 millimeter film through the early 60s, from the 30s through the early 60s. They were own worth from the 30s, and including my parents in Alaska and stuff like that. That's where they met, and I took that and converted all of them to VHS tape. Had it done professionally to VHS tape. Then we played the VHS tape and recorded my mother in vivid stereo on a stereo recorder with stereo mic onto cassettes. And I've wanted to merge those two together in a digital form. I can't even find the tapes at this point. I don't know where they are. And they're probably in a hot garage someplace getting ruined. Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I've tried to play a lot of tapes. So we're on Zoom right now. So the rest of you, if you're hearing this, you can't see it, but I've got a 4-track reel-to-reel deck behind me, and everything I've tried to play on it goes. The thing needs to be fixed, and probably won't be. So it's lost.
For a plug for Floss Weekly. If they watch the video of Floss Weekly, they can see your cool.
Yeah, they can see that in my background. On Floss Weekly. Yeah, it's true. So if you want to see the things that don't work, go there.
So getting back to Matt Stoller's, editorial, there's one part that I thought I would pull out. These two phony Facebook pages illustrate. He's referring to some Facebook accounts that were removed. They were allegedly run by Ukrainians, and anyway, they've been removed because they violated Facebook's policy. But the quote is, he goes on to say, these two phony Facebook pages illustrate the crisis of the free press and democracy. Advertising revenue that used to go to quality journalism is now captured by big tech intermediaries, and some of that money now goes to dishonest, low quality, and fraudulent content. Well, I can't, I find no fault with that statement. It seems, pretty reasonable. But I wondered, given this problem that, like you say, sponsorship dried up a bit, the money went toward, display advertising, tracking, that sort of thing. Given that, how do you bring back old-fashioned, let's call it, quality journalism? Given that people want to spend ad budgets on these massive networks, whether it be through Google or, as you pointed out earlier, Adobe or Amazon or Facebook or whatever, given that so much money is going there, how do you redirect it? Is that, I mean,
the question is, do people want quality journalism? I mean, we've gotten to a point where
that's a scary conversation, but worth having.
Just going back to Twitter, people get their news via these micro blogging platforms. I mean, they'd rather get a few sentences, if that, at a time, and that's their news. I mean, do we want, and I don't mean you and I,
I do the same thing. Although I would argue that I have a pretty well curated list of people I follow. For example, on Twitter, I have very specific lists of people, not necessarily even through my personal account, through even the podcast account. I find the people that we're following through the podcast account, if I log into that account, I find that the quality of the information shared there is incredibly high and incredibly valuable to me. But, that, do I assume that everybody is heavily curating their list in the same way? No, I do not. Everybody self-select, to their own biases, and that can get, that can get a little bit iffy.
Yeah, and it also boils down to perception, right? You said it yourself just now. You follow a curated list of high quality materials, but there could be somebody else on the other side of the spectrum that believes the same thing.
Right.
But their curated list could be full of misinformation, but to them it's high quality. I mean, it's.
But Petros, I know better.
Yeah. So I'm looking here at I'm looking at my Twitter feed, as it were, and I think of my list as of who I'm following as curated, but it's over 5,000 people, and I've got 25,000 followers, which is meaningless because
I hope I'm one of those people, Doc.
You are. You probably. I assume so, but I don't know. I mean, but here's the thing. As I go down, I see some music. I see some tech. Here's some more tech. Here's a weird thing about an owl in a plane. Here's, of course, is Reality 2.0. Here's something Apple did. Here's another, about this web. Most of it's about the webcasts I'm on, or those kind of things. It's, and then about fires, because I've covered fires, and sports. There's something about sports, and because I never use the T word. On there, if somebody I like is busy writing only about, I could say it here, only about Trump or only about politics, I just either stop following them or I just hurry past, so I'm not seeing them, and that I've got a similar thing going on in Facebook, but on Facebook, mostly I'm in groups, and the groups are weirdly have no advertising in them at all. And I realize it's because I kind of self-selected there, and I don't want to see any targeted advertising. So I'm not seeing it. And I've got the privacy stuff cranked up all the way. So I guess that eliminates me as a target, which is, weird, but I mean, and good, I think. I don't know. An interesting thing here is that there is a way, there is a way forward for preserving the journals that are successful. And I should point out the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Atlantic, lots of reputable journalistic enterprises are doing just fine, so it's not, and they're doing it more and more with subscription. Subscription is the hot thing right now. And for that matter, on podcasts, if we're willing to read live ads like I do on Floss, we can, and we get big enough here on this podcast, we'll start doing that. And that's the old-fashioned way. That is the oldest way to do advertising there is. The host kind of endorses the product, and the product supports the host, and and the guests, and it's all there. And even if you're, but it's still contextual. It's and that's the big thing. It's contextual ads. You're doing sports. We're going to give you car ads. We're going to give you tire ads. We're going to give you ads for deodorant. We're going to give you ads for fitness products, and because that's roughly the audience you're looking for, and you can make a brand that way. But it's an open question for me whether or not you can make a brand on something that's as small as your phone. I'm not sure you can. I think it's something as big as your TV you can when you're eating up 30 seconds or 60 seconds of somebody's time, but maybe not on your little thing where you can hit fast forward. All the podcasts I listen to, basically, I hit the 30-second jump forward, jump forward, jump forward, jump forward. Joe Rogan, for example, is like 7 minutes of ads at the beginning of his podcast. And he just sold for $100 million. But I wonder how many of his listeners are just hitting that fast forward, 14 times.
A fair number, but enough gets through. I think going, not to go back to our last week's conversation, but I think the nature of the way that people listen to podcasts sometimes, let's say during a workout or driving or while they're doing something else, I think that lends itself to the kind of pre-roll sponsorship advertising, because when people are sometimes just too distracted. Like when I used to listen to a lot of podcasts while driving, I'm not gonna whip out my phone while I'm driving and fast forward to the ads. I'm just gonna let them play, and no big deal. And I think that might be an advantage of the medium. Just again, not
I went
the
for
medium,
a walk last
the way
night.
people listen to it.
Yeah. I mean, during the, I'm sorry, there's a leaf blower in the background there.
I don't hear it.
Doing a podcast attracts leaf blowers. So it
it's true. Or dogs outside.
It does. It does. Either that or chainsaws or whatever. Anyway, I decided, okay, I'll go for my evening walk and listen to either Trump or Biden on ABC and NBC they were. And I couldn't get an ABC radio station on my phone, but I could get an NBC one, or whichever one it was. Oh, an ABC one had Biden. So I heard part of Biden's town hall, and then when they broke for ads, I turned around. I was headed home. It took the whole walk home. It was like, I don't know how many minutes of ads they had in a row. Probably 4, which is 8 ads, but it seemed like freaking forever, because I had to listen through the whole thing to wait for it to come back on. And that was interesting to me. I mean, are we going to put up with that forever? I kind of feel like maybe not. I don't know. What about you, Petros? Do you put up with it?
That's how it's always been, though. I remember the days before the DVR and waiting until the commercial break to run and use the bathroom. It's funny because I have the same conversation with my children. They're like, is this live? Can you fast forward this? No, I can't fast forward it. You're just going to have to sit down and sit through these ads. But specifically to the debate yesterday, I instead of sitting down and just, forcing ourselves to watch through the ads, we would flip back and forth between both town halls during during the commercial breaks. I can't tolerate it anymore. We've gotten so accustomed to, at least in this household, to not want to watch commercial breaks, to the point where either one, we'll either flip the channel during them, or two, if we can't fast forward and we want to watch something live, we'll start watching it 15 minutes later just so we don't have to deal with watching the commercials. And even on radio, I will just change the station. Fortunately, things like Sirius XM or whatever have fewer and shorter.
That's right. That's ads. True. Yeah. And they know. I think. I mean, I'd be really interested in the numbers. I'm sure they'd never reveal them, but I know from talking to people, for example, at NPR, if you're using, say, their NPR One app on your phone, what used to be called NPR One, it's actually reporting back not what you're doing as a person, but this user, again, it's anonymized, skipped over this, didn't skip over that. They know what people jump around. They know when they crank it up to 1.5 speed or something like that because of, like the Daily on the New York Times. There's a guy named Michael Barbaro who does this. And it's always, welcome to the Daily. I'm Michael Barbaro. He's so slow. I can easily listen to him at 2x speed, no problem. But if his guest is on and they're talking fast, I have to slow it down. But, you know, we value our time, right? And we haven't figured this out yet. I mean, that's another point here, you know, is, you know, we haven't figured it out.
Actually, it's funny that even in journalism, I will open up a news page or, you know, something, a web page, and because of the time taken for that advertisement to load, sometimes that page does not render well or does not load in a timely manner. I usually give it 5 seconds. If it doesn't open, then I shut the entire page down and move on. I mean, this is, like you said, we value our time. I'm not just going to, we've gotten so accustomed to just, you know, bypassing a lot of this noise that we just don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, but then we get, you know, it's sort of, it is interesting how people orient to that. There was a really great show called Defending the Caveman back in the early 90s by a guy named Rob Becker. And it turned out it got franchised. So he's a comedian, and he talked about, it was all about men and women, or men versus women. And his case was that women were still gatherers and men were still hunters. Only men at that time, you know, what women would gather was details, and what men wanted to do was kill things with spears. Only they didn't have spears anymore. They now had remote controls for their TV. And women would look at the TV and like what's on, and men would, because it's before DVRs and things, and men would look at TV as like, get that off my TV, get that off my TV, get that off my TV. This is what we have with my wife and me. I mean, she watches the evening news shows, she jumps around, and she tolerates the ads. She doesn't really care. I mean, they run right through like 4 minutes of ads. I pick up the remote control and I want to kill off every one of them because I want them out of my room. This is, get that off my TV, get that off my TV, get that off my TV. And she's amused by that and I know there are 4 minutes of ads and I can jump forward 30 seconds 8 times. I go click, 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 you know, 8 clicks. And then there we are, you know, getting back into whatever it is on the news show. But it's part, I mean, in her case, is tolerating them. I don't think she's curious about them. She just kind of tolerates them. But I don't. I'm very much the caveman that wants to throw spears into those things and get them off my TV. And there's some listeners right now are saying, no, you're being sexist and all that. But blame Rob Becker and go look at that show.
So scanning back through our conversation about, you know, the Stoller article we were looking at. No, I'm just going back to the utility idea. I'm like,
well, I mean, since you brought it up, a friend from Indiana University, Barbara Cherry, who is of high repute on these things. I'm looking for her email, which I think I shared with you guys on this thing.
Maybe.
We were talking to her this morning, but I missed most of the conversation because I was going between meetings online. But what did she say? I'm trying to rewind back through it. But anyway, her point was that, you know, that these things are not utilities. Utilities, the government will tell you what's a utility. Electricity is a utility. The phone is a utility. I don't even know if the phone is, but you know, gas is a utility. These are things that are they're government mandated and they're regulated as utilities. And we can call Facebook a utility, but it's not. It's a website, and we use it, and it's an app and some other things, but there is nothing permanent about these things, and they are especially impermanent and in the digital world. I mean, where's MySpace now? I mean, where's Microsoft? I mean, we were going to break up Microsoft in the late 90s, and who cares about it now? You know, Microsoft is like the biggest contributor, or one of the biggest, to the Linux Foundation, and they were fighting Linux. They called it a cancer or something like that way back then.
Yeah.
The world changes, you know. I mean, it's the, you know, Jeffrey West wrote about this and why companies fail and cities live. You know, the internet's a city; it's got everything in it, and it's going to live just fine. But you know, Facebook and I mean, remember when you know, we talk about, you know, social media killing journalism. Remember when it was when shopping malls killed downtown. Well, shopping malls didn't kill downtown. They didn't kill Main Street. The car did. It's the original main streets are made for carriages and horses and people walking around. And we brought that back with, turning downtown into shopping malls and pedestrian plazas and stuff like that. But now the shopping malls are being killed by Amazon, or being repurposed by Amazon. And the big box stores played in that too, but Amazon kind of half killed the big box stores. And now Walmart is in the same business, right? And it all shifts. There's nothing permanent about any of these things. And I'd rather rely on nature to deal with these things.
Well, I mean, yeah. Yeah. Let's see let the vines grow on it and see what survives.
But nature's slow. I mean, nature is slow. And again, digital nature is still really young. We're, in the digital world, it's like, 5 minutes after the Big Bang, and we have a few light elements and no galaxies, and no heavy elements. The whole periodic table isn't filled out yet. And it'll be a lot bigger than the periodic table when it's done.
It's almost like we haven't learned our lesson when we broke apart the Bell companies with your AT&Ts and
yeah.
Well, so that's an interesting
really
point.
Good. It's a great point.
Yeah. So again, we were talking about the analogy, to utilities, but maybe all of these analogies are just, a desperate grasp because it is so early and we just don't understand it. And that, I don't know who that collective we is, but the we, whoever it is, doesn't understand it well enough. So anytime somebody writes about, whatever struggle they perceive is rooted in internet technology, there's this need to explain it in terms of something they do understand, like, utilities or printing presses or whatever it is. But maybe this is all just, a symptom of our lack of understanding. Maybe we need to stop trying to make, those kind of analogies and actually figure out what the hell it is, like maybe we need to really figure out what Facebook is doing and figure out what Twitter is doing and figure out. Hard. I know it's too hard where nobody can figure it out.
So, I mean, to Petros's point about breaking up AT&T, that did a lot of good back in 1984. It really did. I mean, we really did need to break up this thing that was incredibly powerful. And but what we ended up is kind of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. We got a whole bunch of the same thing from a bunch of different companies, and a lot of history happened after that. I won't go into, but what happened with the internet, especially with the web, was that the internet and the web were like a Trojan horse that got wheeled into, especially the PTTs, which were the AT&Ts of Europe, which are far more powerful in many ways than AT&T was, because they were state utilities, and along comes a bunch of high-energy physicists who say, we have a way of sharing documents. What do you say we use this protocol, HTTP on TCP/IP, and run through your pipes and don't pay for anything, because we're just a bunch of high-energy physicists. And they said, okay, and that was the Trojan horse that had the web in it. And ultimately, they made more money because of the internet, right? But still never fully understood it. I still don't think they understand it. And I think that, we've seen this with open source and free software. I mean, like I wouldn't say who it was, but I mean, on a recent Floss show, it was pretty clear to me anyway that the guest wasn't really getting what the GPL was about, or the AGPL, or these other things, and it's very hard for people to get what the GPL is about. It's very hard for them to get that, giving people freedom and protecting the openness of this code along with the freedom that rides on it has some really major advantages. But if you're basically looking to make money off of something, and it's by selling the code or access to the code or something else like that, you can't see it at all. And I mean, I look at what China's doing. Look at what Europe's doing with trying to, with the regulating privacy, and in California regulating privacy. I think I'll probably end up voting, I think, for Prop 24 here in California, but it's horrible. And I think what the GDPR, not to be confused with the GPL, very different, but the GDPR and the CCPA have created a $1 billion business in compliance to the consent regulations that do nothing more than perpetuate exactly what the law was meant to stop, and inconvenience the entire web by putting these completely pointless, these completely misleading compliance notices on the front of every website. It's awful, and that's policy at work. So,
that seems
but
to
anyway,
be the go-to. I mean, that's
it is.
that's
Well,
always
everybody, all we have to do it. Our lawyers tell us to do it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the whole. Oh my God, it's.
Yeah.
Where if we just had better protections on our own as individuals. No, I'm not seeing the goddamn ads. Okay, I'm not seeing them. Done. We had that with ad blocking. We have that with tracking protection. The browser makers are coming in with it anyway. Why regulate that when you've got, at an individual basis and at a systematic basis with the browsers, ways of stopping it, just stopping it? And
because, like you say, it's early and we're desperate. It's early, and while we're waiting around for the Mozillas of the world to come out with the next version of their browser that adds additional protections, over on the other side, people are, yelling at their congressman, I guess, or whatever it is that they're doing that makes legislators decide that it's up to them to fix the internet. I wish I knew why the go-to knee-jerk reaction to there's a problem on the internet is let's pass some new laws about it.
Well, there was one of my favorite early Onion headlines about this was "Error found on internet."
Exactly. Yeah.
Techies are on the case. So here's an interesting thing. So since we spoke last, Apple came out with a new, with the iPhone 12. Google fanboys came back and said, wait, now the Pixel 4 and now the Pixel 5 is just as good with the camera. To me, the important thing is that as a photographer, if I have a choice between a new lens or a camera or a phone that does a better job than my big, heavy, weighs 10 times as much as a phone SLR, what do I want to get? There's a lot of things that my phone won't do that my camera does, but it's the thing I have with me, right? I have it with me. And they're getting really good. What I'm seeing now is that the phone cameras are leapfrogging what you can do with a cinema camera, like a RED camera or anything. That's where the science is going. It's going into here's the tiny little camera that's inside your phone. Wow. It's doing some amazing stuff. And then the software they lay on top of it, and again, the journalism is done with phones. That's not about social media. That is about the phones. It's about the tech that all of us have with us, fully distributed. Every one of us, we can save it back through, we can do it on Facebook, we can do it on Periscope, we can do it on Snapchat, we can do it on just our own, just pull it into our own servers. All of that stuff is possible. And it's this little thing we hold in our hands. To me, that's reality 2.0. That's the digital thing that's happening. And it's not just about what these big companies are doing or what government can do to regulate them.
Well, don't tell the FCC or they'll go after the phone manufacturers after they're done with Twitter, because obviously it's Apple's fault. Whatever gets filmed, that's an interesting word. It's Apple's fault that whatever is recorded with their phone and put on the internet is harmful, right? Obviously, it's the device then.
Well, they can as the go ahead, Pedro. Sorry.
I was going to say it reminds me of the age-old argument, and it doesn't matter which side you stand on. How when somebody gets shot,
it's the gun thing.
It's not guns don't kill people. People kill people, right?
Yeah. There's a comedian named Johansson. A few years ago, he said, "Guns don't kill people. Bullets kill people." And he had this whole funny thing. He says, I've got a handful of bullets in my hand right now. Hold still, I push them into your brain. So, whatever. By the way, Ajit Pai, I'm told, and I don't follow him. I'm just looking at him now. Is actually a funny guy, I'm told. Quite aside from whatever there is. I'm looking down through his thing here. I guess he's a Chiefs fan. He's a big Chiefs fan. I have a cousin who is the offensive line coach for the Chiefs, by the way, Andy Heck. And he played for the Chicago Bears, by the way. The Bears. That's for you, Petros. He married a Chicago girl, too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, interesting fact, although I do not remember his name, so please forgive me, but my neighbor's grandfather was on the cover of the first issue of Sports Illustrated, and they actually have a few copies in their basement, like framed and mounted, and I think they have one of his jerseys and so on. I don't know, just fun little fact that you just reminded me of.
So this is a Chicago story. There's a thing in San Francisco, it used to be anyway, I don't know if it still is anymore, when I lived up there, called the Black and White Ball. It was this formal ball that took place in the streets in like 13 different venues, and it cost like $100 to go, and you wore a tux or a gown if you're a woman or something fancy. And you walked around town, you went to these different venues, and you stand there and you'd see, somebody famous singing or something like that. And I'm standing at one of these, I think it was watching Junior Walker and the All-Stars doing Shotgun or Roadrunner or something. And next to me, standing there, is Mike Ditka. Unmistakably Mike Ditka, at that point already the former coach of the Chicago Bears, himself. So that's my the Bears story.
Yeah, my wife has my in-laws have pictures of them posing with Ditka.
He got around.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm kind of reflecting on all the things we've been talking about for the last almost an hour. And I'm thinking, I wonder. So we, on one hand, we seem to be, have all be of the opinion generally that regulation doesn't help. It's definitely not the first step or the first place you go to solve any of these, perceived problems. But on the flip side, we also talk all the time about the harm in ad tech tracking, privacy violation, which is at the heart of all of these platforms. So, and I just wonder how do these things fit together? On one hand, do you leave them alone and just let them do their thing? And because we certainly don't want to treat them like a media outlet, because we don't think that that's what they are. But on the other hand, they do give bad actors unprecedented access to spread misinformation and target groups of people. What's the word at a very granular level? Like you can
hack people with them.
Yeah,
you can hack people with social media.
So
you can hack their brains.
I feel like the next episode is going to have to be the counterpoint to everything we just said today.
I can think of people you could bring on, but that might be an interesting thing to do. But
how do you reconcile those two things?
There's a law of tech that says what can be done will be done with it until we figure out what's wrong with it, and then we stop doing that or we try to do less. And I'm not sure we need regulation to do that. I think, with nuclear power, we blew up a couple cities and we never did it again. Had some other interesting effects that had to do with world powers and so forth, but we got more sensible about it. With nuclear power itself, we discovered, wait a minute, what are we going to do with the waste? Well, now we got to think about that. We're sort of fracking endlessly, and at some point, maybe when Oklahoma blows up or something, say, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Who knows? We kind of take everything to the limit, and that's happening right now with social media. I think in the case of Facebook, it can't fix itself. The way it's made, it's made to maximize engagement. What is engagement? People respond to something. They respond to things that they like or piss them off, and then they throw ads in front of that. But if they started doing contextual advertising, I'm not sure it would make much difference, because they're still maximizing engagement, right? So they're still going to get everybody who loves Trump together with other people who love Trump, and everybody who hates Trump or loves Biden, which, you know, I think is possible. I don't know. I think he's kind of a blank slate, but, you know, he's the non-Trump. But anyway, you know, they tend to gather too, you know, and it's made for gathering them. And I'm not sure they can fix that. Yeah. You know, they hired a few years, you know, they can't fix that.
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly. I don't know. I think it's Facebook has been Facebook for far too long, and maybe some of that cannot be fixed. And also, I quickly Googled it, and on the cover of the first Sports Illustrated was Milwaukee Braves great Eddie Matthews. That's my neighbor's grandfather. So anyway, moving back to the original topic.
That's good. Good. Close that loop.
Yeah, the original topic.
Important.
Print media.
This is the Eddie Matthews edition.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe that's where we leave it. Maybe next time, tune in the next week or so, and maybe we'll have contradicted everything we said today. Or maybe we won't. But I think that's that's the point. I think it's important to have these conversations, and at least I think if people take one thing away from our episodes is that please think critically about these issues.
Everything is broken. That's it. Nothing can be fixed.
Everything is
broken. You don't have to agree with us. Absolutely.
I have to say,
don't agree with us.
I love that everybody talks about things being broken and they're still using them. So how can they be broken if everybody's still using these things? You know, it's like conversation is broken. I don't think so. We're doing it right now.
No, they're just they're worth investigating. That's all. I mean, we use it. This podcast now has a Facebook page. I resisted it for quite a long time.
Yeah, no, I think that was smart. You know, and it's gotten a lot of response. I got to say, it has you know, you can call this the Eddie Matthews edition. I have to listen through to the end to find out what that's about.
Exactly. Exactly. I should tell my neighbors about it.
If you're so inclined to use the social media, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube. Although I neglect YouTube a bit. Where else can you find it? Mastodon? Any the Fediverse? Trying to think, where else are we?
Not the extinct kind, but
no, not the extinct kind. Oh, and please sign up with our newsletter for our. Cool. Please sign up for our.
Good job on the first newsletter, by the way.
Oh, good.
That was good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I was mostly just pointing people at your writing, so.
Well, there's so much of it out there. It's easy to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll continue to do that a little and some other things.
By the way, I just close with this. I was told that, sorry to delay this even further, it's like Beethoven ending a symphony. He doesn't know how to do it. I got a pitch from Quora to basically to accept, to take money because ads run next to stuff I've written on Quora. Well, my answers on Quora, which I've been putting short answers to things there since 2011, 6,100 views this month, which I don't know what that would, if I sign up, what money that would get me, but that it's more than my blog has had.
Wow. Do you have a signature? Does Quora have a signature where you can like plug things?
It's just Doc
Oh, well,
Searles.
that's where you put in a link to the podcast.
That's what I should do. I should make myself an authority on podcasts and say it's all about, this is one podcast you really need to catch. There it is.
Yeah. Step 1, post on Quora. Step 2, get visited bazillion times. Step 3, profit.
Step 3, be around a long time. Leave a big crumb trail.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thanks, everybody. Until next time.